Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with another top 10 list. Today it's off to the playoffs because we're going to be talking about the top 10 Spike Brothers units, and this is going to be a bit of a fun video because when people think of Spike Brothers, they think of a deck that basically does nothing. They look at this and say, yeah, this is lame, this has never done anything in the history of anything. But as it turns out, Spike Brothers is actually a rather impactful clan which enjoyed its fair share of success as evidenced by these top 10 units here. So we're going to go ahead and be talking about them today. Now, when it first began, it wasn't really much of an assuming deck. It was one of the OGs, however. All the way back in Descent of the King and Knights BTO1, Spike Brothers was one of the OGs. Being played by a member of Team L4, Kyoyahagi, although not for long, Spike Brothers has been relegated as sort of the bully clan in a way. A lot of these somewhat fodder characters tend to play them, whether it was Kyo for a while, or if you're looking at Congo Iki over in Break Ride era, or this guy in G Next. No one all that impressive really played Spike Brothers, and even Kyo, the one most noteworthy example, only played it for the original series. They had him play Pale Moon, Murakumo for some reason in the next era, so I don't even know why they made that transition to V. I think it has to do something in the manga, but I digress, right? So Spike's not really the most well-represented clan in the anime, but how about its abilities? Is it an impressive clan on paper? Well, somewhat. See, like the other two clans we talked about previously, Dark Regular and Pale Moon, this AL4 clan also focused on the soul, but the way that it did it was a sort of a fodderization method where it would utilize the soul as a means of fueling your very high octane skills. So this came in the way of soul blasting for the effects of more power or superior calling, what have you. There's a constant cycle with Spike Brothers where you'll put in cards from hand or the rear guard circle in the soul, only then call more units back from the deck to the soul. And the whole point of it is that it plays like a football team. You're constantly putting in fresh substitutions from the football team to go and continue the offense to try to score that touchdown. It's a very, very aggressive clan, but also one that's relatively speaking a glass cannon, as it actively sacrifices your defensive options for more offensive options. And ultimately, this does lead Spike Brothers to have a bit of a difficulty curve as a clan, but it's one that players have been finding ways to abuse and still get around for years to come up until the modern day. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the top 10, as I mentioned before, and a top 10 Vanguard is going to be qualified twofold. One, it's going to be qualified based on their holistic impact to the clan. So it's not just how strong they are, but how versatile they are, how long they've been impactful, and what ways are they impactful. If they had a unique benefit to the clan, that might make them more impactful than others who are just kind of bringing more of the same to the table. And something else to notice about this top 10 is you'll find that there is going to be a fair bit of competitive success about a few of these Vanguards, because yeah, Spike Brothers actually did score touchdowns. They did win playoffs sometimes. This is a pretty good football team, guys. Well, Gallows ball, but that's besides the point. And the other thing to note about this is we're going to be taking a look at units that are grade 3 or greater and have a Vanguard circle effect. Almost never will I do something that doesn't have a Vanguard circle effect unless they were the true winning image of the entire deck. But there won't be an exception like that in this video today. So we're going to be looking purely at grade 3 or greater Vanguards. And now, with all that said, before we head into the meat and potatoes, let me just say that if you want to see more top 10 videos like this, I do a lot of them on this channel. So do be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and most important of all, turn on the notification bell. I'm going to do one of these top 10s for each of the 24 clans, so if I haven't gotten to yours yet, you'll definitely want that bell to be ringing so that you don't miss out when I do upload. And with all that said, let's begin. I hope you enjoy. Starting off with the honorable mentions, we actually do have an honorable mention to speak about, and that would be Jelly Beans. I know, what a goofy way to start off this list, but trust me, Beans does include it here as an honorable mention for very good reasons. See, Beans doesn't qualify as a boss unit because he doesn't have an effect on the Vanguard circle whatsoever. I mean, he doesn't even have an effect on a circle. He only has a singular hand effect. But he is a very worthy mention here because he enabled one of the clan's better competitive builds. From the moment that Dudley Cheers Lindsay was released in GPT-13, seeing this card being played was a clear indicator of what you were fighting against. Effectively being able to search G Guardians was super powerful for accelerating the number of cards in your G zone for your powerful GB8. Yeah, the main win condition of this clan for the longest time was accelerating to GB8. We are going to be talking about that later. But for now, Beans is a consistency piece that had definitely helped get the ball rolling for that iconic strategy, but he's not a boss unit, so he's not going to make the list. Imagine it. It's your first day in high school ball. You're confident. You passed the preliminaries. You feel like you're athletic. You're going to get into sports. You're going to get into college ball. And then you get down for the first play of the first quarter. And this is the guy facing you. At number 10 is Great Villain Dirty Picaro. This was released all the way back in G Technical Booster 01, and it had this one skill, which is a hell of a skill. Auto on the Vanguard Circle, Generation Break 3. Counterblast 2, choose a face-down card from your G-Zone and flip it face up. And you choose a card from your hand and put it in a soul. See, already starting with that. When this attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 card from your deck for each face-up card in your G-Zone. Call the cards that were searched to separate open rear circles and shuffle the deck. This was a very strong comeback stride for the clan as a whole. Spikes had an issue with losing card advantage left and right because it's a very aggressive mechanic. You had to burn your defense, your offense, as I mentioned before. And for those of you who were down on your luck and out of resources, Picaro could basically give you a whole field for free of your choice. As a very nice panic button, it would find its way into many G-zones for Spikes that led itself to helpful hands when game states took a turn for the worst. And of course, it should be noted that this is another reason why Spikes would end up trying to turbo out Gs, as the more cards you had face up the G-zone, the stronger Picaro got in general. Well, up to a point anyway. We only have 5 zones to work with after all. Still, Dirty Picaro was a really strong plan B option for the Spikes card pool and has remained there for most of its lifespan, putting it at number 10 on this list. And number 9 is Demonic Lord Dudley Emperor, the OG one. This was released all the way back in EBO3 Cavalry of Black Steel and had these 2 skills. Auto on the Vanguard Circle, Limit Break 4. Counterblast 2 and choose 2 Spike Brothers from your hand and put them to soul. Yeah, we did not pay small costs in Spikes. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 Spike Brothers, call them to separate open rear circle, and shuffle the deck. Yeah, that does look familiar, doesn't it? Also, it has an auto on the Vanguard Circle that when it's boosted by a Spikes Brother, it can get 3k power until the end of that battle. The original Dudley Emperor doesn't look like much on paper. As a matter of fact, he probably looks really effing bad. But 13 years ago, he was quite the beast. Due to the alternate set release schedule for English in 2012, we would get Spike Brothers' second wave of support shortly after BTO 6 Breaker of Limits. However, there were no BTO 5 Awakening Twin Blade decks, aka no MOB, The End, or Tsukiyomi to wreak havoc in the meta, so Dudley Emperor had a much easier time in this format. This led to a whole different format where Golds was the meta, and Dudley Emperor was also a pretty good rogue deck. The aggressive game plan relied on Juggernaut Maxim, High Speed Bracky, and Reckless Express to clear the rear circles after attacking to then be recalled by Emperor to make 5 whole attacks. And 5 attacks doesn't sound like a lot by today's standards. As a matter of fact, that sounds more like the average, but back then where 3 attacks were more so the norm, 5 attacks was a heck of a lot. It was still a very fragile deck, of course, defensively, but still, if you could win before needing to defend, then who cares about defense? This incredible glass cannon-like deck would see 2 regional tops in 2012. One of them was a first place finish in Hong Kong, actually, so yeah, don't underestimate Dudley Emperor. And at number 8 is Great Titleist Villain Verminous. What even is a Titleist? Might be a Google search later. Anyway, so this guy released in the infamous 2020 Premium Collection set and did so with this one very modest skill. Auto on the Vanguard Circle, when the attack of a rear guard on your circle with a force marker doesn't hit, Soul Blast 2 and flip up a card in the G-Zone. Draw a card and call a card from your hand to rear circle. The infamous 2020 Premium Collection, what a sight to behold. So many busted cards we talked about from that set. And this guy is also worthy of being talked about, albeit he's not quite as busted as a lot of them would end up being. Now, Villain Verminous was another finisher in a G-Zone that was fraught with finishers. This is Spike Brothers after all, right? But there are a few things that need to be pointed out about Villain Verminous in particular that made him particularly handy in the G-Zone. Mainly that auto skill is not once per turn, so you can keep obtaining the condition, which worked great with Force 2, by the way, as that means everything you attacked with had a crit. And if you could pay the cost, you just keep using it, which means, yeah, you just keep attacking over and over and over and over and over and over again. And remember, a lot of the cost of your other cards are putting cards into the soul to then be foddered for something like Villain Verminous, which is soul blasting 2 at a time. You can flip a whole lot of cards with this as well, which may seem like a downside because you're going to run out of like G-Zone, but A, this might kill, so you wouldn't care, and B, it helps you turbo to the GB8. Yeah, that again. Anyway, Villain's at 8. And at number 7 is a dude who definitely ate his Wheaties, Blackhorn King Bullpower Agrias, which released in GPT 13 Ultimate Stride. So Bullpower Agrias has a singular auto skill on the Vanguard circle, which states that by counterblasting one and flipping up another Bullpower Agrias from the G zone on attack, you can choose any number of your rear guards and bind them face up. Then if you bound 3 or more, you draw a card. Furthermore, you then call 2 cards from the bind zone for each face up card in your G zone, called the separate open rear circle, and boom. Just like that, you've got a full field again. So it is a GZ card, as you may have noticed from the set code there, but it is admittedly a GPT-13 card, so it's one of the more balanced ones all around. Still though, it's an easy multi-attack, and it even drew a card, which, oh, I know, drawing a single card, whoa, that's so astonishing. The 8th miracle of the world, right? OGT could never, but no, seriously, for friggin' Spike Brothers, that's amazing, because basically everything we've talked about up to this point is actively like negging you, or in Villain Verminous cases, it's just a break even, but this is plussing you a card, and Spikes just don't plus. They don't plus hardly at all, except to maybe the field with some cards, but never to the hand. So Bullpower Agrias is pretty exceptional that way. But in addition to that, he's also a really good aggression tool. Binding and recalling units was a part of the G-era charge mechanic, which allowed you to gain additional skills when you called a rear guard bind ability, but then the downside being that they have to go back to the bottom of the deck. So Bullpower Agrias was able to reenact your charge abilities by calling them through a card ability, even though it wasn't from the deck that they were called from. So it was a really good workaround. In addition to that, it would be much better for the V-Series Spike Brothers cards who had plenty of good on-play skills like Juggernaut Maximum or Spike Bouncer. This made Agrias the prime first and sometimes even second stride of choice for the 2018 premium deck version of Spike Brothers, but more on that later. And at number 6 is General Seifried, the V-Series retrain. This guy released all the way back in VEBO 1, so this was the very first version of V-era Spikes that we got. So he's the Vanguard among Vanguards, one could say. And honestly, it was a pretty good start, as evidenced by these skills. Act on the Vanguard circle, counterblast 1, and put a rear guard in the soul. Search your deck for up to 1 card of the same name as what you put in the soul, call it to rear circle, and this unit gets 10,000 power until end of turn. Furthermore, auto on the Vanguard circle. When this unit's attack hits, you Soul Blast 2 to stand one of your rear guards and retire one of your opponent's rear guards. Yep, simple, easy, strong. You probably weren't expecting General Seifried on this list, but he's actually pretty high up here because he was the boss of choice for the 2018 Premium Spike Brothers deck, a pretty successful variant of the clan, might I say. Often referred to as V plus Spike Brothers, it's basically just playing the V-Series deck, but with the G-Zone, which you didn't really need much more than that because, yeah, can I just say that including a force marker for Spike Brothers was a glow-up that none of the other clans really enjoyed. I mean, force markers are good for a lot of decks, right? I mean, just look at things like Bermuda Triangle and whatnot, but for a clan that could constantly multi-attack on the same singular circle, a force marker meant a world of difference. I mean, just look at Villain Verminous. Villain Verminous's entire game plan is based around that singular abuse point of Spike Brothers. Now, fast forward back to here with Seifried. Funny enough, like Agrias, a lot of the G-Zone meshed better with the V-Series stuff than some of the G-Era cards. The clan's legendary GBH was no exception to this either. Anyway, V plus Spikes was pretty competitively successful and made top cut at 3, count them, 3 different BCS events in 2018. And of those 3, guess what? It won 2 of them, flat out. Those being BCS London and Richmond. Now, that being said, this was only going to be a sign of things to come. This was the early premium success. It would cascade out of control far more later on into the format's development, which I guess is just a Dark Zone clan thing because both Pale Moon and Dark Irregular also were really good in premium and fairly meta dominant. And the final Dark Zone clan, Gear Chronicle, is basically the premium clan, so yeah, definitely a premium clan. Anyway, General Secrets at 6. And cracking the top 5 is Demonic Lord, Dudley Lucifer, the V-Series retrain which released in Clan Selection Volume 2. Now, Dudley Lucifer had these 2 skills. First off, auto on the rear circle when placed by your card's ability, Soul Blast 1, and Countercharge 1. Then, auto on the Vanguard circle when it attacks, cost. Counterblast 1 and put a rear guard in the soul to draw a card. Call a card with Dudley and its name from the hand to rear circle, and if the opponent's grade 3 or greater, that called unit gets 10,000 power to end of turn. Lucifer here is quite the versatile card. Its Vanguard skill is pretty good. It's just a nice multi-attack that gets power and also helps you tutor the hand a little bit, but that's of course not what we're really here for. What we're here for is that rear guard circle effect. Being able to simply Soul Blast 1 to countercharge that isn't a once per turn can be used multiple times for multiple countercharges and is by any card ability whatsoever perhaps including even the effect of a Vanguard Dudley Lucifer, is just insane. It's one of the best countercharges that has ever been printed in the game of Vanguard, and it's Spike Brothers that managed to get this one. So many clans would kill for this, but nah, it goes to Spikes. The main thing to focus on was that conditionalist countercharge, but in addition to that, this card just harmoniously worked with so many different aspects of the Spike Brothers clan. For instance, did you know that you can actually use its Vanguard ability while also being able to use its Rearguard ability at the same time? Yeah, there's a card further on this list that'll let you be able to do that play line, so more on that later. But in addition to it, Spike Brothers has a really big propensity to call grade 3 specifically from the deck. Things like Absorbs Rona as well as the Ride Fixer, both specifically called grade 3s, along with cards even like Dudley Davy, which just says a non-grade 2 Dudley, which Lucifer qualifies for. So you have a ton of ways to call Lucifer. He's just completely synergistic with the entirety of the clan, whether it's a Dudley deck or not. Furthermore, it should be noted that one of the greatest anti-meta tools in Premium was Honolly. It was a card that taxed your opponent a counterblast for every time they would multi-attack extend. However, Dudley Lucifer could fight against this actively by being able to Soul Blast one to countercharge one, meaning that every time you called Lucifer for a multi, he would break even against Honolly. So it was an incredible tool all around and just had to be making the top 5 here. It'd be criminal not to put Lucifer at this high. At unlucky number 4 is Lawless King Gabalus, which released in Premium Collection 2022. Now, Gali here had 2 skills, the first being an auto on the Vanguard circle that whenever the rear guard attacks, that unit's going to get 10,000 power, but bot decks at the end of that battle. Furthermore, when this unit attacks, you Soul Blast 1 to search the deck for up to 2 grade 2 or less cards, call them to the open rear circle, and shuffle. Then, all of them, all of your rear guards will get boosted until end of turn. So I'm not sure if Spike Brothers could have asked for a better custom card, but that's basically what they got. Like, this card is so bonkers. A fanfic made into real life on card text. Extra power. Remove the need for rears that would vacate circle because he just vacates them himself. And a relatively easy double superior call. This card interacts with an old stand trigger from G called Mecha Instructor really well, which allowed for even further attack extension. And that's just the more well-known example, to be completely honest. This card has almost infinite amount of abuse potential and is sometimes nicknamed the mini Hellhard 8, which as we'll get to the top spots on this list, you'll see why that is very flattering. The more tools the clan gets, the more tools that Gali gets. It is an infinite possibility kind of card and a very powerful one at that. Just for reference, since this card's release, it's been a part of 19 different BCS topping lists. I wouldn't say it was the sole reason for the deck's success, but it did allow for extreme pushes when striding. So yeah, welcome to college ball, folks. And now taking the bronze is Juggernaut Maximum. Yeah, that's a pretty funny name. You want to know what's even more funny? This guy is a retrain of a G-Guard. They made a G-Guard into a whole Vanguard. I don't know why. Spike Brothers is such a silly clan, man. Anyway, let me just get back on topic here, right? So this is a V tree train that was released in Clan Collection Volume 5, so the Twilight Years of V series, and it has 2 very strong effects as a result. Auto on the Vanguard circle. At the beginning of each main phase, if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets caught on the Vanguard circle. All of your units placed this turn gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield. Ooh, that's an interesting effect for Spikes. Auto on the Vanguard circle once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If you placed 4 or more rear guards this turn, Soul Blast 3 to choose a column and stand all of your units in that column. Then, if you stood Maximum himself, this unit gets Drive -1 and you bot deck all of your rear guards at the end of the turn. Yikes. So this is another big contributor to the clan's more recent premium success. This guy was a push turn incarnate. Max was just a good ride target because he provides additional shield value as well. This is something that's very welcome for the Spike Brothers clan because, as I've mentioned a few times here, this is a living embodiment of a glass cannon and this right here is probably the most tanky version of Spikes that you could reasonably play for the most part, or at the very least, it is one of the best ride targets for the most tanky version of Spikes, which we'll talk about in a little bit, right? This allows you to play defensively, but when it came to offense, it was also incredible. Now, he was a prime target for V Series Rising Nova, which I know it's kind of a minor spoiler, but let's be real. Anyone who knows Spikes knows that V Rising Nova is going to be coming up here in a hot second, and this was a prime copy target for that guy because the combination effect of Maximum restanding units, particularly your Vanguard column, in addition to whatever other nonsense you would have for the Vanguard itself, would just lead to insane combination plays that the opponent just were not ready for. I mean, just think about it. The football players have a Dragonic Overlord on their hands. That's pretty insane. Furthermore, Max doesn't require any counterblast whatsoever, so you can't get CB choked on this. It's just a simple Soul Blast 3, which is a ridiculously easy cost for a deck like Spike Brothers, which just naturally builds Soul as a result of many of their other plays. So for this reason, it's got a lot of tops. As a matter of fact, it's even got a top 16 finish at BCS Tampa as recent as 2025. So people are still playing Max pretty religiously to this day. So yeah, welcome to the top 3, buddy. All right. We've dodged around the topic long enough. Let's just bite the bullet and get to them, right? At number 2 is Exceptional Expertise Rising Nova. This V retrain released in VBT 10, Phantom Dragon Aeon, and had these 2 lovely skills. First off, continuous on the Vanguard Circle. When you would acquire Imaginary Gift Force from Riding, you may get both 1 and 2 instead of 1 or 2. How quaint. Furthermore, after the Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast 1. Choose up to 2 of your grade 3 rear guards, and this unit gets all of their abilities until the end of the turn. Heart once per turn. Yeah, because that totally makes it balanced, right? Anyway, this is probably one of the worst designed cards in all of V-Series, like flat out. It's tailor-made for a ever-expanding card pool that could take advantage of such a crazy skill. You have basically infinite possibilities. Any 2 cards that you would want as Vanguards, Rising Nova becomes in all of Dark States. And I want to emphasize that because that means that as Standard grows, you get more abuse targets for Rising Nova. I mean, just imagine it. This guy can copy 2 Blanked Myers and get the Divine skill as soon as turn 3. That's insane to me. I don't even know why this should be a possibility, but with Rising Nova, it is. He doesn't even have to pick different named rear guards. They could be the same thing. He just gets their effects twice. I don't know why they did this. Another really insane and recent example is Greedon from DP03, which allows for the Rising Greedon strategy that was quite prevalent during the ride down years of Premium. And in addition to that, you've got Juggernaut Maximum, we just got done talking about. So you could get multiple Vanguard restances, as a matter of fact, if you were able to pay the cost, which, bear in mind, Rising Nova is free as it comes. You simply have to Soul Blast when to get the copy, and that's all. Everything else is just the cost of your other cards. Furthermore, because of all these extra restands and combinations, the X factor of being able to get Force 1 and 2 instead of one or the other means that your Vanguard attacking multiple times is going to have that extra power and crit pressure every single time, and it just gets better because if you ride another Rising Nova, you can get them both again. So you just keep spamming out one of each force marker. It's a benefit that only Rising Nova can really be able to give. So this is a one-of-a-kind strategy here, folks. Furthermore, you have to keep in mind that Galley or Verminous are still strides, right? You can still keep calling on what I'll dub the football over and over and over again. So for Verminous in particular, as you called, like, let's say 10 cards for like a 12, 13 attack battle phase, most of those attacks have 10,000 and a crit to them, in addition to whatever power-ups they may have of their own volition. Oh man, this is such a fun card. So having said all that, right? So I've made it pretty apparent. Rising Nova, just terribly designed, one of the worst designed cards ever, and it just has no limits to what it could do. But how did it do competitively speaking? Well, it's at number 2 for a reason, folks. From 2022 to the present, the Rising Nova deck focused had 14 BCS events. It scored first place finishes at New York and Anaheim in 2022, which are some pretty prestigious events for Vanguard. But its most notable finish was its top 4 in 2022 World Championship. What's also very notable about that one, in addition to being Worlds, is that it was also the first in-person event for Worlds since the 2020 pandemic. So in a way, Rising Nova came close to making history there. Yeah, this is a very competitive deck, folks, and it's one that it's going to constantly adapt as time goes on. So, second he goes. Yeah, only second. Let's talk about that. And now, taking the top spot as the MVP of the Gallows Ball team, the big gold medalist of the Spike Brothers clan, the number 1 temerarious cataclysmic rogue, Hellhard H. Yeah, so this dude is the biggest and the baddest, and it really shows in name, in art, and also in effect, as it has this skill. Auto on the Vanguard Circle, Generation Break 8. Yeah, 8. The first and only time we're ever going to get a GB8 here, folks, so let's read it. When your unit attacks, choose one of your units, and until end of turn, it gets 10,000 power, and auto on the rear circle. Choose this unit in a card from your hand and put him in the soul. By paying the cost, you're able to take an attacker or booster and substitute it for a card from your deck to an open rear circle. Yep, this is one of the most powerful strides ever printed, and this is coming from a card that requires you to get to at least 7 cards face up in the G zone. How is that possible? I mean, how? Well, essentially what happened here is Spike Brother players got quite desperate, right? They were looking at all their options. They realized that they had a lot of kill potential, but they just weren't able to kill reliably enough, right? And so come G Fighters Collection 2017, the set where this released from, aka the GB8 set, because that's where all the GB8s came from, we finally got the answer, the true ultimate win condition to put your everything into, the one play to rule them all, and it was worth it. Now, these are the Turbo GB8 decks. What they would do is they would use a few different factors to try to get as many cards in your face-up G-Zone as humanly possible. Villain Verminous from earlier at the number 8 spot was a really big proponent of the Hellhard 8 mechanic, but he was a bit late to the party there, right? We were still turboing prior. The real essence of the turbo came from Jelly Beans, the honorable mention. And this is why I'm saying he was worthy of the honorable mention despite not being not having any van or rear effects, right? By adding a heal trigger to the hand, you're able to Generation Guard. Generation Guards add cards to your face-up G-Zone. And if you're using a Generation Guard that flipped up another G card, then you were able to get them faster. What was odd about this strategy is that it deliberately over-guarded attacks just as an excuse to get as many G guards up there and thus turbo out your generation breaks. You could get Hellhard 8 up and live as soon as turn 4. Yes, turn 4, you could get this going. And the moment that it hit the field, your opponent was dead. It was a ticking time bomb just waiting to happen. Being able to convert every attack into another attack of its own volition every single time and giving them 10,000 power in addition to their own skills is insane. And what's also interesting is that it's not just the attackers that are getting the power, it's also the boosters that are getting the power and the ability to recall. So from just a singular column, just one singular column, which are probably going to have those force markers I keep talking about, right? You will get a near infinite number of attacks that is only held back by the number of cards in your hand. However, because you would just keep getting attacks over and over again, you don't need to call anything else. Just keep the one unit on the column and constantly use cards in your hand to keep refreshing that column with superior calls from the deck. Furthermore, Hellhard 8 typically ran draw triggers as a way to replenish your hand and get the maximum number of calls. And because Hellhard 8 skills live during the entire turn, the triple drive from Hellhard 8 himself when swinging will then be more fuel to the fire for when you do the extra multi-attack. So you can just swing at Hellhard 8, get your triple drive, and then keep attacking until the cows come home. This was a win condition and all win conditions. It won numerous events. Like, for instance, every event that Spike Brothers have ever won in Premium, they have ran Hellhard 8. Hellhard 8 has been perhaps their primary win condition, whether they were turboing it or not, because you can also just naturally reach Hellhard 8, and if you did that, well, the game was over, buddy. So this card just completely changed the landscape for Spike Brothers. It had enjoyed minor success up to this point, but the moment Hellhard 8 came onto the field, the Gallows Ball team had a winning image. They finally had a way to close out games reliably, and it turned out that the tenacity of the Spike Brothers player pool was quite something to behold, because they just kept finding ways to make this quicker and more efficient and more deadly and use other combinations of grade 3 Vanguards with Hellhard 8, whether that was Spike Brothers' own Rising Nova just to get the Force 1 and Force 2 on the column, or they wanted to use Juggernaut Max to get extra defense. They had so many different path lines to make Hellhard 8 as beta worthy as possible, and they succeeded in spades. So, because of how it was able to redefine the clan and put it on the competitive circuit for seemingly the first time ever, it has remained competitive ever since then, and to this very day, no matter what other kind of nonsense came to Spike Brothers, Hellhard 8 is still the strongest win condition that they will ever have in the playbook. For all these reasons, this will be remaining at the #1 most impactful boss unit in all of Spike Brothers. And that was the list. I'm not gonna lie, guys, this was a really refreshing video to make. When people think of Spike Brothers, they often think of the silly football clan that never made anything of itself, a truly insignificant deck that no one plays because it's just never going to top. But this simply wasn't the case. When making this video initially and doing my research, I figured there was only going to be a few pretty good Spike Brothers decks, and the rest were just going to be boss units that were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. But imagine my surprise when I was able to find 10 very powerful units that legitimately saw success in one way or another. This deck really surprised me, and even more so because it turns out that when it came to spikes, despite the outward appearance of being all about the aggressive plays and wicked win conditions, the true key point of the Spike Brothers deck relies on its ability to do combo plays with its other rear guards. The versatility of units and what unique benefits they bring to the battlefield were just as important as how well they were able to close games. Of course, basically every boss unit on this list was able to close games in some way with another, although there were notable exceptions like Dudley Lucifer, but at the same time, Spikes is a rather convoluted deck that really is skill expressive. The more you're able to think in depth about your combo lines and see the pathways for victory, the more yield you'll get from this deck. It's kind of a thinking man strategy when you really break it down, and that's so surprising because it's filled to the brim with ogres on steroid abuse. That said though, I believe Spike Brothers is a pretty strong clan, and one that still sees success, particularly in the premium format to this very day. And as a result, I'd say that despite its non-assuming appearance, its competitive success really speaks for itself and shows that Bushiroad did kind of understand what they were doing with Spike Brothers overall. It's one of the better success stories for a clan that I've seen from this top 10 list, and one that I think will still carry on for the future years to come. Thanks for watching. Now, as y'all probably have guessed at this point, next up is Gear Chronicle. And if you guys knew my rant about premium Dark Zone decks just being the shiznit, you know that Gear Chronicle is going to end it on a strong note because it's the only clan that didn't even release until G. It's the youngest child of the bit, and just like any typical youngest child, it's really annoying and had a need to prove itself. And it sure did. But more on that in the next video. In the meantime, if you did enjoy this video, then do be sure to look at the other top 10s that I've done thus far. And if you liked anything about it or disliked anything about this list or have any ideas or suggestions for the Gear Chronicle list, do comment down below. Trust me, I read them. And I do top 10 videos, fight nights, tier lists, reactions, the whole shebang. I do a bit of everything. So if you're looking for Vanguard content, do be sure to get on board here and watch out for the next time I upload. And with that said, take care, God bless.